I don't know who, somebody was said, "Oh, this hot tub's so big, we could go skinny dipping in it," and like no one would ever know
Yeah.
because we were so far from each other. So it was just a joke. We're like dared each other, like, "Oh, get under the water and take off your bathing suit."
Ooh. Then this guy named Alan, this elder, taps on my shoulder during the meeting, and I'm close to the back of the
During,
Kingdom Hall. During, and says, "Yeah, we're going to need to see you in the room behind us here." And I was like, "Okay." And I'm a ministerial servant. I'm like, "All right, that's fine." And it just blew up into a big thing. And they had, I think, 3 meetings. And I thought, okay, that's a real big deal to them. What is the deal with Jehovah's Witnesses just being perpetually swimming in each other's soup, never minding their own business, coming out with Watchtower articles about how you shouldn't gossip and you should mind your own business, and then no one minds their own business. Everyone is tattling on everyone.
it's the worst. It's that whole environment is a breeding ground for nosy Nancy's, busybody Betty's.
Both.
They're all up in your business. And it's crazy because on the left hand, they're saying, don't pry into other people's business. No one likes a gossip. But
Right.
then literally on the other hand, they're like, if you see something, say something. Like you're expected to come forward with any information about any activity that could even potentially be construed as breaking one of their trillion rules.
And they're all about not adding things to the scriptures, but of course they have all the governing bodies rules about what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, and stuff that you can get in trouble for.
Yeah.
But we do have a story of our own to share here. We'll share in a bit.
Story
but
time.
the story, well, not quite. Shut up. For example, I remember I was about 19 years old, maybe 20 years old, and a buddy of mine had gone to see the movie Old School.
Nice,
it's a
Saturday.
Will Ferrell movie.
We're
It's a
go
kind of just a silly comedy.
Wallpaper,
I think it's rated R because they swear and you see Will Ferrell's ass. It's really just a silly, silly movie. And no one should ever feel that anyone else is being damaged by this absurd comedy. But apparently, my friend, who was about my age, he had been warned not to go see any R-rated movies, and that movie was brand new. And then he told me about it. Oh, this is so funny! I'm like, oh, I got to see that. That sounds great. And not thinking about it, I very casually mentioned it to my uncle that I was going to be going to see it because Bud said it was good. And my uncle, his response was, I mean, this is 24 years ago, but something like, he went and saw that movie. He is already in trouble, and I just argued to make sure he didn't get, I think, reproved again or something like that. And if you know what reproved means, it's where you get, basically they announce and they shame you in front of the whole congregation. They say, Jason Hansen's been reproved and he can't pass microphones anymore and he's been bad. So, watch out for him for a minute until.
And then they throw tomatoes at you.
Yeah, the shaman tomatoes, they just chuck them at it. They're all soft and mushy. So anyway, I accidentally chucked my friend right under the bus.
You rat.
I'm a rat bastard. I write to my uncle, and I don't know what repercussions there were for that. But it was just so stupid. And there's just all this overreacting in the organization of Jehovah's Witnesses. If you have been, I'm talking to any listeners, our 3 listeners, if you guys have been affected by this, if you have accidentally thrown somebody under the bus, intentionally thrown somebody, I think I have intentionally too, I have to figure it out. But if you've done this, or it's been done to you, and you want to share your story, go to speakpipe.com/difficult childhood and share your story with us. We'd love to hear it. And maybe we'll be able to share it on the channel. But yeah, I completely threw him under. It was rough. It was
How
rough.
embarrassing would it be if your downward spiral towards a life of debauchery started with Old School with Will Ferrell, and it was just a gateway film, and it was all downhill after that.
It's very funny, but it really does bring into light how absolutely absurd their rules are, because these aren't things that damage your life. I mean, they will hide heavy, heavy drinking all day long. I mean, yeah, you're not supposed to, but they will. I have stories about that too, where they just go, they kind of sweep it under the rug. We don't want to make a big deal out of that. You know, there was an elder that was drunk at a party. Things got no big deal. Those things will actually hurt you. Going to see a ridiculous comedy is never going to hurt you. It's not a spiral into addiction.
I mean, I would hope not. Yeah, the double standard it's tangible. It's a real thing. And I don't know if you're ready to like jump into our story.
Sure. I shouldn't have.
So we kind of teased this in our last episode. Jason and I have a story that kind of has to do with like busybodies, people that can't kind of stay in their own lane, but then also how there are so many double standards as far as punishment goes, depending on what your status is within the organization. Yes. So we're gonna just share our funny story. So this was many decades ago.
Okay, like two and a half.
Well, that's many.
That's many. Do you ever say, "Look at those two people
half
walking"?
My life ago.
Such many people walking down the street when I see two people. Okay, go ahead.
You want to do this? Okay. Yeah. That's half my life ago. It's half my life ago. Okay?
It is a long time. Yeah.
So me, Jason, and Jason's one of his siblings, we were all hanging out. Bear in mind, we've known each other our entire lives. We're as close as any group of friends could be. So
we're all between 19 and 21 at this point, years old.
Right. Yeah. We're all over 18. Okay. So we were all hanging out at one of our apartments, and there was a large hot tub. And I say that because it was like a community size hot tub, like for the whole apartment complex. So it wasn't like we were in this little tiny hot tub all together. Right. So we were just hanging out, talking in the hot tub. Once, I don't know who, somebody said, "Oh, this hot tub's so big, we could go skinny dipping in it," and like no one would ever know because we were so far from each other. So it was just a joke. We're like dared each other, like, "Oh, get under the water and take off your bathing suit."
Ooh, I don't even think you took off your lower part of your bathing. I think you just took off the upper, and you were still under the water.
Took my top off.
Yeah. Under the water, bubbles everywhere.
Under the water,
dark.
Can't see anything except like neck. Of course, we were all like laughing hysterically, and that was it. That was the whole thing. Everybody put their trunks back off. That was it. And our day just went on just as normal. So I relayed this story to a friend of mine, who I had known for many years. She had known you guys for a few years and knew that we were all very close and knew that nothing had happened. For whatever reason, she took it upon herself to contact the elders and explain her version of what had happened. So I'm going to say probably a month passed, and I was living, I was in a different congregation than you guys. And an elder approaches me at the meeting, and he's like, "Fallon, we're going to need to have a quick little meeting with you in the back after like a Sunday meeting." And of course I thought, why? Can you give me a hint? And he's like, it's about a hot tub incident that we've had reported to us. And of course I instantly knew who had, told. Not that we were even like trying to keep it a secret. It was, to us, it was so silly.
You could tell because you literally told your friend.
Right. So the elder whisks me into the back after the meeting, and he's like, "It's been brought to our attention that you engaged in some questionable activities." And of course I was still so shocked. And he was very kind, and it wasn't like a committee. It wasn't like a panel of brothers. It was just one elder by himself. And this was the extent of the meeting. It lasted maybe 5 to 8 minutes. He said, "Was there any inappropriate touching?" No, there was not. He said, "How do you know these brothers?" And I told him, like, they're my best friends my whole life. We've been very close. He said, "Okay. Question number 1, was there any inappropriate touching I said, no, absolutely not. He said, was there any viewing of like each other's bodies? I said, no, nothing like that. He said, was there any lewd discussion? Like, were you discussing anything lewd or inappropriate? And I said, no, like it was just a dare. I mean, it was a joke. I said it was nothing like that.
Yeah.
And he said, okay. And he thought about it for a minute. And he read, I think, one scripture about
keeping your damn clothes on. You see here, it says...
That wasn't the actual verse.
Don't show your...
He said, let all things be done with love or something like that. One of those verses, to just exercise
But we
modesty.
did this without love. I mean, honestly, that was kind of the ideal. They wanted us to do this without love.
So he just said, use better judgment next time. Yeah. And that was it. That was the whole meeting. At the time, I was not a regular pioneer, but I was a regular auxiliary pioneer. Mm-hmm. And that was it. They were just like, okay, the end. So I thought like, oh, it's a done deal.
NBD.
It was not a done deal for you guys. So I'll let you tell how the same story unfolded on your end.
Well, this person who told on everybody came to me, and she shall remain unnamed. But anyway, Jenny said to me, basically, what you did was loose conduct. I think she said. I was sitting. She called me and said, "Can you come outside of my apartment?" And I went down, and she's sitting in her Kia Rio, and I'm like, okay. And she's like, my conscience is really bothered by this. You weren't there, Jenny. And then she said, you have 2 weeks to tell the elders, or I will. And my feeling was, screw that. That's dumb. They're going to, wave her away. It's no big deal. And I said, okay. And I just proceeded to do absolutely nothing about it. And about 3 weeks later, this guy, Alan, who was one of the elders at our Kingdom Hall, me and my brother's Kingdom Hall, that's how else you can tell that it was a silly, not teenager. We're all in our I guess he was 19. We were like 22 and 23. But it was a silly nonsense thing because my brother was there. I mean, so anyway, you could tell it was not anything, sexual at all to it in that situation. And but she had this big problem with it. And then this guy named Alan, this elder, taps on my shoulder during the meeting, and I'm close to the back of the Kingdom Hall. And says, yeah, we're going to need to see you in the room behind us here. And I was like, okay. And I'm a ministerial servant. I'm like, all right, that's fine. And it just blew up into a big thing. And they had, I think, 3 meetings. And I thought, okay, that's a real big deal to them. And they just would not let it go. And so for me, it meant being no longer a ministerial servant. For me, it also, for my brother, he was told he could not regular pioneer, which is a big honor in the congregation. Honestly, probably the nicest thing that could have happened to him. The guy didn't have to go out and service so much. And also he was a ministerial servant, and they stripped him of that too. Now, of course, from our perspective now, these are all good things to not have to do. But when you're in it, you're just so shamed and so defeated. And I remember my dad having me over at his house because I had an apartment in town, and he just wanted to talk to me and my brother that were there. And he's like, I don't know where I went wrong with you boys. I'm like, really, Rick? Calm down. I don't know where I went wrong with you. You have a couple of ministerial servant and one of them's regular pioneering sons who engaged in a silly jape. Stop it. But that's how there's this weird thing where they're almost excited by the notion of reporting someone and that person being shamed, because then maybe you're a little more righteous because you're the one that's reporting someone. But then also you're kind of saving that other person's soul.
Mm.
Very, very strange. I don't know. Is that the perspective that you get from people who are so keen to do that sort of thing?
It gives the elder body an opportunity to use you as an example.
Yeah.
This
Oh, for sure.
this is the consequence if you don't follow the rules 100%. Shame on you. Shame on your household. like the Klingons would say, shame on your whole household. Yeah, so I think it gives them an example that they can hold up and say, see, no one's safe from falling from grace.
Dishonorable.
Yeah, it was crazy. I, of course, lived away from home. And my mom, who is or was your mom's best friend, called me and she's like on the verge of tears. And I said, what's wrong? I was in my car. I said, what's the matter? She said, I just talked to Becky. I said,
all right.
okay.
You do that every day.
Yep.
Good for you.
All right. She's like, I know about the hot tub. And I'm like,
wait, the time machine?
That's
that was
one.
Before that came out.
It was the time machine before the time machine. And I said, oh, yeah. I said, it's no big deal. I said that, an elder talked to me. He just said, use better judgment. And that was it. And my mom's voice is like breaking. She said, they stripped Jason and his brother of all their privileges. I instantly just start sobbing.
Oh, no.
I felt so horrible because I got nothing. I mean, I got no
you got survivor's guilt.
Imposter syndrome. I felt horrible because they didn't make, which I wasn't full-time pioneering, but they didn't make me stop auxiliary pioneering. They didn't take away any of my privileges. They didn't make an announcement, like nothing. And I just thought the double standard was so crazy.
Yeah.
And it's not just like they, they secretly take away your privileges. They announce it like in front of the whole assembly. Like, oh, this brother is no longer serving as an elder. And they don't say why, but of course that just leaves people to their own imaginations about what terrible, mortal sin you've committed to get you in that much trouble. So it was horrible. Yeah. I was sobbing my eyes out because I just felt so awful.
Oh, it was so unnecessary to make anybody feel awful over such a minute, trivial thing. I don't know. They just seem to thrive on that kind of shaming. I guess that's part of being in a high control group.
Mm-hmm.
Let's make sure everybody feels 100% awful all the time about anything they're doing. Just the slightest little things.
And the double standards weren't just with the elder body. The person that told, we're very young. We're making lots of stupid decisions. So we regularly hosted parties with a lot of alcohol and, there was just lots of poor decision making. Nothing that was catastrophic by any means that would warrant, a grand tribunal with the elders or anything like that. We're just young people. We're just living. So I don't know why they chose to fixate on that one thing, but it had a lot of ripple effects because I remember I talked to you on the phone, I think once or twice after that. And it was so, I know you weren't mad at me. You were just mad at the situation. But the way I interpreted it, because I just felt so bad about the whole thing, I felt like you were mad at me. And then we didn't talk for, probably a year or two.
It was a while, and it was just so unnecessary.
Well, we've seen the double standard policy in other places as far as getting punished or getting disciplined in love. And I think we've even mentioned it before that if you are part of a married couple, if you're one spouse or the other, if you are the brother in the marriage and you are called before a judicial committee, You get to choose whether your wife sits in and listens to your hearing or not.
Right.
If you are the wife, you do not get to choose whether the husband sits in or not. If he wants to be there, he's allowed to be there. If he doesn't want to be there, he doesn't have to. So even that even that area, it's the double standard is disgusting. Kind of, they don't give you any rights as an individual.
And this seems to be a problem from my perspective as an atheist that goes through most religion. There's fairly few religions that allow a female to do the leading at the church or to be teaching in the church, and it's just so completely unfair. It's unbelievably sexist. I will grant that it is worse, I think, in Jehovah's Witnesses than most Christian denominations, but I mean it's getting almost Islamic levels of you guys cover up and you don't, what you say doesn't count.
Right. I'm so glad I don't go to one of those places.
What places?
A place where women are suppressed like that.
Oh yeah, I see what you mean.
We have like a pastoral couple, and they're married, but she's an ordained minister in her own right, and she's incredible. She's incredible. So
That's cool.
I'm glad I'm not in a place like that.
I see a lot of just, I'm trying to avoid going political here. I see a lot of activists that are super in favor of women's rights, but then also let's protect every religion because it is, every religion is the same and religious rights are universal, and completely ignore the fact that many of these religions oppress women horribly.
Mm-hmm.
There's the gays for Palestine. What are you talking about, buddy boy? I don't think you're paying attention.
I don't think it means what you think it means.
Oof.
Oh, that's rough.
All right.
So yeah, if you've ever been the victim of a double standard practice within the organization, we would love to hear your story, because I'm sure there's many more out there. And then also something else, just in the midst of this conversation, a skill that I've learned after I left the organization, which I didn't even realize how bad it was, is the art of just minding your own business. Just mind your own business. Mm-hmm. The culture inside the organization is that you're expected to, I don't want to say rat on people, but you're expected to come forward if you even have a suspicion that some rule might be, being broken. And it almost sows like distrust among members to a degree. And it just took me a long time, even after I got out of the organization, to be able to look at someone else's personal life, whether it was a good situation, a bad situation, a problem on the job, problems with their kids, anything, acknowledge that situation and then just leave it alone because it's not my business. And it was bad, and I didn't even know it.
It is interesting. I found after I left that I would be judgmental of people more, and even it was just people who weren't like people who were living a life that just didn't match my general. I still had a very Jehovah's Witnessy vibe for a couple of years after I left, and I would still just be like, oh God, they seem like they're a real big mess. No, they're just a hippie. Be nice. It's a very strange thing. And I've noticed that from my parents, really judgmental about people whose children were disfellowshipped or went away or quit. That family must not be doing things Jehovah's way. I heard that many times. I can think of very specific people. Obviously, I won't mention that's their life and their story, but specific families that had a son disfellowshipped or a daughter go away or somebody quit or a daughter get pregnant was one of them. And there was just this, and because none of their kids, all their kids, my parents' children, my brothers and sisters were still in. and on the outside looking like they're doing really well. Well, that's because we do things Jehovah's way. That would be the kind of thing my mother would say. And I I noticed when my younger brother got disfellowshipped, and I don't think he should have been. There's actually a video I did, I'll link it here, of why my younger brother got disfellowshipped and how stupid that was and how torturous that was. But then after he got disfellowshipped, their attitudes were like, oh, okay. And I'm sure it's probably helped a little bit now that they know I'm an active apostate, because they're just, the arrogance of those two was palpable. And I see it, I've seen it all over, just this incredible arrogance, as long as all the kids are in the truth, huge air quotes there. And then, and then there's that judgmental and being ready to, tell on people. But it certainly did diminish a lot when they got a little bit of a taste of that.
Yeah, and I mean, you're very unaware when you're in it, and that's all you know. That's your environment, and your friends are so similar to you. It's like you're blind to it until something happens. A kid leaves the organization, or gets disfellowshipped, or you have this awakening, this lesson that you have to learn the hard way. And then it's like, your eyes might be opened a little bit, like, oh,
Right.
Yeah. But also it's so freeing to not have to take on all these emotional burdens and feel like, I'm responsible for everybody's everything, their life, their relationships, all their business is my problem. It's so freeing to just throw that off and be able to focus my energy on my own life and my own victories and my own, issues. And
Right.
oh, it's so nice.
It is amazing. And to the kind of the point of I think we make this point probably every episode, that life is better on the outside.
So
when I left, I was just like, oh, I'm going to go to Home Depot. I see somebody that's disfellowshipped. I can do whatever I want, and I would always feel a little low key like trash for not saying anything to them. Like, this is stupid. And there was a time when I was ultra in that I was like, no, that's the righteous thing to do. But once all that lifted, man, that is just one of the benefits that I think you're really going to enjoy if you're thinking about leaving the organization. Just being able to be nice and non-judgmental to anybody you want to out in the public world, and not being underneath that. It's amazing. It's liberating.
I remember one time I ran into a girl that was, I think maybe just a year or two younger than me. She was one of my tutors in high school, American school. And she was disfellowshipped. And
School.
I ran into her in the supermarket, and like we just happened to both be like exiting the aisle at the same time.
Right.
And I turned and I saw her, and just a reaction, like she waved real quick. And then it was like she caught herself in the middle and like tucked her hand.
Oh,
and of
boo.
course I just gave her like just no emotion, just a flat expression. But then like she scurried away down the aisle, and I just felt horrible, as if my acknowledgement or my hello or wave was like a carrot I was dangling in front of her,
Yeah.
like almost like teasing her with it. I didn't mean to, but I just felt awful. And
Yeah. I feel you there. A friend of mine lost her husband. She's a little younger than me, actually, but this is like 10 years ago he passed away, and he was a friend of mine. We were all in the same congregation, and shortly after he passed away, he died of cancer and then complications. He was in recovery, but like he was recovering from it. I don't know that he was fully in remission, but he was getting some pretty aggressive treatment. And I think ultimately the treatment is what, affected his health and ultimately killed him. Just complications. It's awful. Such a sweet guy. And of course, when your spouse dies, your life isn't going to have a real smooth stability.
sure.
I don't know why, but she was like within a couple of years disfellowshipped. Maybe it was even sooner than that. My timeline's a little spotty. And then I proceeded to just start shunning her. And, here she is, lost her husband, and then loses all her friends in her community. Like, what the hell are you elders doing? And then I guess linking this back to what we were talking about, when I got out, we reconnected online, and she still lives in the area, and now we're all friends. Actually, we're going as a group going bowling this Saturday, and we do lots of stuff together. She is an absolute sweetheart, and her boyfriend, who she started dating, I think about 2 years ago, super nice guy. So we're all building new friendships. But I will tell you, every time I see her, a little bit inside of me wants to say, "Oh, sorry about that time I shunned you." Like,
Yeah.
that was
Hey,
so rough,
sorry.
and it was so
Remember that
rough.
time a decade ago?
Remember that time
Was
your husband had just died, and I started shunning you because of this stupid. I'll say this. This will be my catchphrase, I think. This stupid cult. let's let's back away from this. It's
Yeah.
absolutely awful, and she's been very kind and gracious in forgiving me for that. It is also interesting to me that the higher up you are in the organization, not just elders, but they talk about how, well, you have to be exemplary if you're in a higher up situation. Well, I remember one elder, pretty much every time a group got together and there was red wine there, he'd get a little tipsy. Nice guy. The guy likes red wine. That was happening right now, and he was my friend coming. I was like, "Ha, Joe, you like your red wine? That's cute." And because he wasn't, it wasn't damaging his life. He wasn't out there drunk driving and getting
It wasn't
crazy.
Anthony Morris.
You beat me to it. But it goes. But nobody had a problem with Joe. But everybody had a problem with the entry level. There was a big shakedown with all the entry levels. And then they did find one elder that they wanted to make an example of for doing something minute, but completely missed all the elders that were getting drunk all the time. So it was a very strange thing. And then you go all the way up to Morris. Tony is out there buying $800 worth of alcohol and loading it up into his dedicated funds paid for Cadillac to boot, literally in the boot. He's putting all this alcohol in there, and he is what was it, 2.5 more years before they got him off of the governing body?
Oh, yeah.
And I don't even think it was necessarily for that. I think it had more to do with what's his name, the lead potato right now, really wanted to get a bunch of those new guys on. He probably didn't want those new guys.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been that, but 2.5 years, you can bet if I were caught doing that, what he
Tomorrow.
did,
Today.
it would have been that week.
Maybe yesterday.
Yeah, maybe yesterday, depending on, yeah. It's crazy how such a double standard.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's important that people listen to their intuition. If you've gone through a circumstance like this, or any of the ones that we've discussed, and you feel like, I just did not get like a fair deal, but then you second guess yourself, like, maybe I'm just upset about how it all went down, and maybe I'm making something out of nothing. Just know that there are so many double standards at play, and punishments that don't fit the crime. You have the right to feel however you feel.
It's very much like we were talking about our last one. It's not special. It's very regular. It's very man-made. It's very much like in a court of law. Then you're going to, if you could go up for the same crime and have a better lawyer and do great and be fine and walk, or you could get 25 to life. So the thing with Jehovah's organization is they call it Jehovah's organization. First of all, they say he has his spirit on everything. And even though the elders and the governing body are not infallible, his spirit will fix everything ultimately. It doesn't. It's all over the map. You'll have somebody do the exact same thing and get a slap on the wrist. The next person would get reproved. The next person would get disfellowshipped and not let back in for a year and not be able to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
It could be the exact same thing with the exact same attitude. And so it's a wholly unremarkable and unspecial organization. I don't think any organization has God's spirit, but if there was such a thing, if there is such a thing, it's sure as hell not that. Just the way that they handle the judicial process or handling any complaints or tattletaling.
A lot of the severity of your punishment has to do with how well liked you are, how popular you are, how charismatic you are. Has nothing to do with, or has less to do with the actual rules that you may have broken.
Ooh, in shadows, Dysfunction behind me, hope inside. New family found, safe and sound. Past was dark, but I'm not bound.